Now, after you learn how to create your form, the next thing you may want to do is to modify it. In other words, you can move the fields around, the labels and their corresponding data fields, change the layout of it. I also have some tips, tricks, and shortcuts that I want to show you to help with the front-end user when it comes to them entering in records or updating them in the form view. In any case, to get started, I've got a couple of forms here. I have my customers and my customers M. The M is for modified, so I'm going to modify this form. In other words, it's a copy of this form. That way, if I screw up this one, I've got the original or the backup. So let me go ahead and double click and open that up. And it's a very simplistic layout here. We've got the labels stacked over to the left-hand side, and then to the right of each label, its corresponding data field. So we've got the customer name, StarTims. So that's the first record. I can go to the next record, home builders, and so on. Now, if I want to go ahead and change the layout, like let's say I want the phone and fax fields over to the right-hand side here, then to modify this, I'm going to go to the design view. And I can get to that view one of two ways. I can either come up here and right-click on the tab, go to the design view, or let me click off, come up here on the home tab to the views group, click on the view drop-down arrow, and there it is again, design view. Okay. And as you recall in an earlier training video when we created our forms, we briefly went over this, but when we went to the design view, you have the grid here, and on that grid is where you can go ahead and add and move around your labels and their corresponding data fields. Well, let me correct that. In the form and report views, they're known as text box fields. So we have the labels here, state, city, and their corresponding text box fields that pulls in the data from the table it's based upon. I labeled it customers because it's based upon the customers table. With this grid, if you need more space to add more fields, or you want to go ahead and tighten it up a bit, just hover over the border of it. As you can see, my pointer turned into black arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then you can go ahead and click and drag in one of those two directions. I'm going to go ahead and hover over the bottom and click and drag that down just a bit so we've got more room at the bottom. Now when it comes to moving your fields around, it's very simple. All you have to do is go ahead and click on one to select it, the text box, then hover over the border till you can see the four-way arrow, then click and drag it, and it'll drag the text box, but also drag its corresponding label. But what if I want to be able to move these independently? Because once I drag them, look at the space here, that's a big gap. I want to be able to close the gap between the label and its corresponding text box field. To do that, notice that when I select one, that both the text box and the label have a little square in the upper left-hand corner. That's how you can go ahead and move these independently. Just hover over it, get the four-way arrow, and then click and drag it, and it will move the label independently of the text box. And also hover over the corner of the text box and click and drag, and it moves independently of the label. Okay. When I move the fax, I need to come back and move the phone, and then if I need to move the postal code, I'm clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging. Well, what I can do instead is do a multiple selection of all those fields and click and drag them all over at once. Click and drag this back. Again, I can either hover over the text box border and drag the text box and it will bring the label back, or I can hover over the label border and drag that and it also brings the text box along with it. So to go ahead and do multiple selections, click on one, hold down the Shift key and click on another, and then hover over any one of the borders that's been selected and then click and drag, and there we go. And notice how that I didn't have enough space over here with the grid. When the text box or label goes beyond the grid compensates for it and opens up and allows it to be dropped there. So you can go ahead and Shift click as many labels as necessary and then click and drag one and they move all over at once. But if I had dozens of fields that I want to move, probably the next best thing to do, instead of Shift clicking each one of those, is to do what's called a marquee. In other words, let's say I want to go ahead and select all of these fields here, their labels and their corresponding text boxes. I can come up here in the upper, left-hand corner or bottom or any one of the corners here, and then when I click and drag, I want to go up and over and cover those with the outline that you see there of a square, or I can do a rectangle. In any case, whatever I cross with those lines or is within that rectangle or the box that I stretch is going to be selected, okay? And I let go, and it selects all the text boxes and these labels, but not those there, because I didn't drag it far enough to be able to get to the address, city, and state. That's okay, because if I hover over any one of these fields and I click on it and drag it, it drags the corresponding labels. Let me go ahead and hit undo. Click off in a blank area. Another way that you can go ahead and select a group of fields is you can come over here in the vertical ruler or in the horizontal ruler. When you hover over it, you see a black arrow. In the horizontal, it points down. In the vertical, it points to the right. When you click on it, it shoots a line down. You see how fast it shot? When I click on it, hold the left mouse button down. You see that line? Anything that intersects it gets selected. Let go, and there we go. Or I can click and then drag and anything in between or within that range from the very far line to the right to the very first line to the left here, when I let go, well, I didn't go all the way over to the left, so it didn't get to the address label, city, or state. And you can also do it over in the vertical ruler here. Just click and drag, and it selects everything from where I started to where I dragged to. And then I'll click off in a blank area. Okay, now that we learned how to select and move them, when it comes to moving, things can get off alignment here. For example, I've got the phone that's a little bit further to the right than the fax. Now I could come up here and click and select the label and then click and drag it and try to, eyeball it. And if I don't get it right, you see I'm not perfect, but Access has a shortcut that is perfect. Let me click off in a blank area. So for example, I can go ahead and use this feature to align these up exactly to the right, let's say, of the furthest label here, the fax. To do that, go ahead and select both of these labels, click on one, hold down the Shift key, select the other, and then come up here on the Arrange tab, go to the Sizing and Ordering group, click on the Align drop-down arrow, and you've got, a couple different ways you can align, either the left or the right. When I select right, Access is going to look at those two labels and find which label is furthest to the right, and then when I click on it, it's going to take all the other labels and align it up to that furthest to the right label, which was the fax label, right aligned, okay? And then of course I could go ahead and click on the corresponding text box fields here for these labels, and then hold down the Shift key and select fax, and then click on the Align, and let's do left now. So it looks at the fax, which is the furthest to the left, and then it's going to take phone and pop it right over to it, left align there. Okay, let me click off in a blank area. Let's go to the form view and see how this is going to look and work for the front end user who's going to be entering in the data. So I can either right click here on the tab, go to the form view, or let me click off. If you can't see the form view button up here, it means that we're not on the right tab. Let's go to the design tab. There it is. Click the form view, and there we go. I don't know about you, but when it comes to entering in records, I start at the top and I use the tab key to tab to the next field, okay? Well, there we go. When I tab, it goes from customer name over to phone. Let's tab fax, back to address, and then down. I can change the tab order so I can have it tabbing from the top down to the bottom, and then from the bottom to the right, and then to the bottom again of that second column. So to do that, let's go back to our design view, right click, design view. Come up here on the design tab over to the tools group, and there it is, tab order, click on it. And it shows you the current tab order. Let me click and drag the title bar for this window so we can move the window down here so we can see, okay, customer ID, there it is. Then to customer name, then it goes to phone, fax, and then it goes back here and all the way down. So if I don't like that order, then what I can do is I can hover over to the left-hand side of the phone field. See how the arrow points to the right? Click on it, it selects the entire field. Once it's selected, then click on that selection and then go ahead and drag and move your field around. I want the phone field second to the last because at the very bottom it should be our fax. So click to select the fax over on the left-hand side, the row header for that row, then click and drag again and dump the fax field down below. Now the postal code's between the phone and the fax. So it'll go to phone, then to postal, then to fax. We don't want that. So let's click in the row header for postal code and then click and drag it up above the phone and then click OK. Let's test the tab order. Click on the view button, hit tab, 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 goes down to the bottom, then shoots over to the right. Great. Let's go ahead and go back to our design view. Go back to the tab order, and what is auto order? When you click on it, let's see what happens. Let me click and drag it down here. It rearranged it, but how did it know what to arrange it to? Basically, it's got the hierarchical layout going from top to bottom. It doesn't see from left to right here. So the field that's closest to the top is customer ID, so that's going to be the first order. Then customer name, address, and then phone. And you can see phone's above city, so after phone is going to be city, and then above state is fax. So you've got fax just below the city, but above the state. Okay, so there's the auto order. It's got it from top to bottom. Doesn't see left to right. I'll go ahead and click cancel because I don't want it in that order there. Now we have a free-flowing layout here. You have two other different types of layouts, basically template layouts you can look at. I'll introduce you to one of them so you can get an idea. You can come up here, click on the Arrange tab, and there's the table, and we've got our two layouts. You've got the stacked and tabular. Now they're not available unless I select all the fields here. So the quickest way to select it, well, you choose either marquee or come up here in the horizontal ruler till you can see my pointer turn into a black arrow. Click. So the line shoots down, drag all the way over to the right so I can select all of them. They become available now. And you can go ahead and hover over one of these, read about it, see if that's what you want. You can also view the icon to get an idea of what it's like before you actually go ahead and click on it. So if I click on Stacked, It automatically stacks them, but not only that, it tags it. You see that little tag up there? It puts it in a table format here. So when I click on that little tag, it moves it collectively. And let's see, other things we can do when it's in stacked mode here. Come up on the Arrange tab, go to the position. Let's control the padding. Click on the drop down arrow. If we want something that has a lot of space in between all the fields there, click on it, kind of opens it up, widens it out a bit. We can also come up here to the Arrange tab, to the Sizing and Ordering, click on the Align drop down arrow, and let's align it to the right. And what that does is it aligns it to the center of the work area. And then if I click off in a blank area, I don't get the options to choose from, so make sure that you go ahead and select one of the fields there. Then if you want to select all of them, go ahead and click on the tag. We get our options back up here on the Arrange tab to the table group. Let's click on the grid lines because we can add lines to these fields here. In other words, outline them. I can either click on both where it has both the horizontal and vertical. I could even go down to border, something solid or dash. Let's do solid. Click on that. And then once we have the grid lines added, I mean you can't see it, it's gray here. Let's go ahead and change it to a different color. Back to grid lines. Let's go down to color. And let's do something that pops that we can see red. Click off in a blank area. And if you don't like it this way, we can go ahead and remove the layout by clicking on it, and coming up here and clicking on Remove Layout. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.